All right, here we go. Frang and Mack on a Monday night NFL Whip Around podcast from Week 16 of the 2015 NFL season. We'll get right into it here. Patriots lose another one, third time in 5 weeks the Patriots lost, which is very uncommon for a Bill Belichick coach team to lose 3 games after Thanksgiving. Second time they've lost in overtime, a game where a lot of people thought, including myself, that they could lose this game due to the fact that they had a lot of injuries in this one. They probably sat some guys that probably could have made it out there, but they played it safe. They lose a tough overtime game to the New York Jets, 26-20. The score really didn't even seem that close. The Patriots really didn't come on until the fourth quarter. They were really getting manhandled in the run game. Their offense, I think, was 1 for 10 on third downs the entire game. If it wasn't for a huge two fourth down conversions on the final drive of regulation, the Patriots would have not even made it into overtime because their offense was just so stagnant the whole game. It was just a tough game to watch from an offensive perspective, and the defense wasn't doing much for 3 quarters either.
Yeah, Mac, I got to give you some credit. I'm the first one to put you on blast when you say something crazy, but you did pick earlier in the week, way early in the week. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. You said that this is a game that shouldn't be taken lightly. Definitely a tough opponent with those divisional guys right up on the interstate. But yeah, it's again another story that we've been talking about all year. Patriots don't play 4 quarters of football. They were down 17-3 at one point. They're lucky they weren't in a 28-3 hole at halftime because the Jets were running the ball at will. They had 97 rushing yards in the first half, finished with 143. So they righted the ship in the second half, but very uncharacteristic for a very, very talented Patriots defense. But even Ryan Fitzpatrick, who threw for 396 yards, of course you're going to say, let Fitzpatrick beat you. But I think he did this time. He came out great. He did have that strip sack that led to a defensive Patriots touchdown. But I think what you saw here was a Jets team that's coming in hot. They control their own destiny for the playoffs now. And you got a Patriots team that's really not healthy. I think the number is 22 guys that they've lost on injured reserve now. So it started as a Brady Torch the World tour. Now it's stay healthy, injured reserve tour.
Survival tour.
Yeah, survival tour. Not to mention having the week 4, the NFL's earliest possible bye, has also paid dividends in this season because the guys are not healthy. Chandler Jones, Jamie Collins, all these guys that are freakish athletes just aren't getting quarterback rushes the way they've been early in the season. So I think health has definitely been playing a big role.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, injuries have played a huge part in the way this team has been of late. But, I mean, you could say we've righted the ship, but for the better part of the second half of the season, the Patriots have been a mediocre team at best. I mean, since that Redskins game with Deion Lewis went down, the injuries really have ensued after that. And they've been no better than a middle-of-the-pack team. Offensively, they've been very,
like you
very
said, very uncharacteristic for Bill Belichick coach teams. Losing after Thanksgiving, losing in December, it just doesn't happen.
3 times. That's incredible in my mind, no matter who's on the field, who's not. Usually, whoever's we always say Tom Brady can turn water into wine on offense. Well, that hasn't been the case this year. Their offense has been mediocre to below average for this second half of this year. They haven't really been able to do anything or truly make the plays when they had to. And the defense has been good at times, and it's warranted. But when it comes down to it, when they've played good quarterbacks, they have not performed, and they have not been able to make the big plays when it counts the most in overtime. This is the second time in overtime where they've given up a touchdown on the first time they've been on the field in overtime.
Yeah, but you do have to give credit where credit is due. No, the offense does not look like a well-oiled machine, but they are kind of surviving because of the GOAT, Tom Brady.
Oh, I agree.
In this game, he led, down 14, leads a comeback to force overtime. That's all Tom Brady right there, bringing you back, just like we saw in Denver a couple weeks ago when we lost in overtime. That's all Tom Brady and Tom Brady's will, bringing you back. They didn't get a lot of help from anyone on offense. You got to give Keyshawn Martin credit. Came down with 7 catches for 68 yards, not a ton of yards. Gronk had a couple big catches, late in the fourth, that giant gainer. But very uncharacteristic. Brendan LaFell, I look up to him, man. I said it to you after the game. I want to be like him when I grow up. I want to do absolutely nothing and just receive a paycheck because, yes, we've established that this guy is not a number one receiver. He's probably a number 3 at best. When you have a Julian Edelman and a Gronk, healthy Gronk, then Brandon LaFell comes out and shines. But with all these injuries, you would think a veteran Brandon LaFell would step up, and he's having the worst season of his career.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's very disappointing because he looked so good last year. And he had 74 catches to end last season. But it really shows you that he really can't do anything with anybody else without anybody around him. When Danny Amendola goes down for spurts of time, Julian Edelman goes down for the entire second half of the season, you need to rely on guys like Brandon LaFell, and he just has not been able to provide any sort of spark for the Patriots of late. I mean, you got a guy like Keyshawn Martin coming off the scrap heaps, coming in and catching 10 passes yesterday and 6 last week, and I forget how many in Houston, but he's been way more productive than Brandon LaFell has. It's very disappointing because that's a guy that
he's been in the offense.
You don't win the Super Bowl without
the system. Yeah, he was phenomenal last year. And even more surprising, especially very thin at that wide receiver position, Leonard Hankerson was cut, which
picked up by Buffalo today.
What's that?
Picked up by Buffalo today.
Yes, and I think they cut him off the 53 roster because he couldn't get the playbook down. So they were hoping he'd go unclaimed so that they could claim him on the practice squad. But Buffalo added him. But to me, that was a huge, huge, huge pickup because he had a great start to this season. He almost replaced Roddy White in Atlanta, gets injured, gets cut. And when the Patriots brought him in, I thought this could have been a guy – okay, maybe wouldn't be a huge contributor this year, but next year that would be great to have a guy like him, a big deep threat target like he is.
Yeah, I think had this been in September, he'd probably still be on the team, but coming in this late in the season, it's almost impossible to get on the field and learn the playbook and not be that familiar with the playbook and try and earn Tom Brady's trust when it's really coming down to the wire here in the final weeks of the season.
I have to ask you, 2 guys that were in the Patriots offense for a number of years, albeit Kenbrell Tompkins, it's been a while, but Stephen Ridley had a couple years in New England, couple productive years in New England despite the fumbling problems. Stephen Ridley had 7 carries last Sunday for 36 yards. Kenbrell Tompkins, 4 catches for 27 yards, but 9 targets. Do you think they had a plan coming in to kind of utilize these guys that played in New England, or was it just one of those, spur of the moment, like giving them carries and touches?
I think Tompkins they might have had that plan, seeing how they have the 2. I don't think it's necessarily.
Brandon Marshall had 8 catches, 115 yards, and the 2 touchdowns on 10 targets. Kenbrell had 9. He had more than Eric Decker, who was virtually shut down by Butler until the overtime touchdown.
Yeah, I don't know if it didn't have anything to do with him playing for the Patriots in previous years. It just had to do with the fact that you have 2 stud receivers. One of them is going to get limited, and then you got one who's making plays, and then you got to have another guy contribute. And they had more than one guy contribute. I mean, the secondary got picked apart yesterday, let's be honest. They had Anunwa, I think was his name, 81, had some huge plays, and Kenbrell Tompkins early on was really, really cranking it up against his former team. And he's a player that I really liked in the Patriots offense, and I wish they had held on to him. But, yeah, he made them pay yesterday. I think it was Leonard Hankerson that just got absolutely abused by Kenbrell yesterday. When it comes to Stephen Ridley.
No, it wasn't Leonard Hankerson. That's the wide receiver. It was Johnson.
Johnson. Yes. My bad. Leonard Johnson, I think Justin Coleman had some troubles with him too.
Yes. Jeff Howe of the Boston Herald tweeted out the stats, and they were dumbfounding. I'll see if I can look that up while you talk. But Butler was flawless from the day. Did it? Even more surprising, Patriots only had 1 penalty for 7 yards in the game, and it was a defensive pass interference on Malcolm Butler late in the game. But Butler was pretty much flawless. They didn't even target, where Eric Decker was just shut down all game.
Yeah, but, he lived up to his Pro Bowl hype, but the rest of the secondary was atrocious, really. It just shows, I hope this game proves to people who rip on Devin McCourty that he and Patrick Chung, they are so valuable to this offense. That huge play in overtime to Anua. Jordan Richards goes out before that. Tavon Wilson comes right in. That pick play gets run to perfection. Nobody can make a tackle. Daron Harmon just had a horrible day. Couldn't make the tackle on that play. That's a play. Devin McCourty and Patrick Chung, 10 times out of 10, make that play and shut it down for a 10-yard game instead of a 48-yard gain.
Devin McCourty was definitely missed, I think, because of the system that the Patriots have been running. Malcolm Butler did his job and shut down Eric Decker, Jets' number 2 wide receiver. But Logan Ryan had some trouble on Brandon Marshall, who became the first player in NFL history to have 6 100 receiving catch seasons. So Brandon Marshall is a talented wide receiver. It showed on Logan Ryan, who has had a phenomenal season, but was beat up a little bit. As we speak, I'm waiting for the stat to load. I'm going to get you guys that info, but it was very astonishing with the coverage stats.
And Deron Harmon, especially. One of the most underrated and biggest plays of the game came, I believe, early in the third quarter, 3rd and 11 from the 33-yard line of the Patriots. The Patriots get pressure on Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick kind of just lobs it up to Brandon Marshall, who's blanketed really by Logan Ryan and Deron Harmon, and Harmon just gets absolutely spun around on the play, and Marshall's wide open in the end zone. Doesn't even look for the ball. That's the play Devin McCourty never gives up, and Deron Harmon just got absolutely spun around on the play, proving that he can't be that. For anybody that said, let's let Devin McCourty walk in this past offseason, Deron Harmon can fill that role, they're completely wrong. Deron Harmon just proved yesterday that he cannot be a reliable free safety against a competent offense.
Okay, so I got those stats for you, courtesy Jeff Howe, Boston Herald. Logan Ryan, 4 of 7 for 50 yards and a touchdown. Malcolm Butler, 1 of 3, 6 yards, touchdown, and the defensive pass interference. But then again, the only catch allowed was in overtime that won the game. Johnson, 5 of 7 for 50 yards. Deron Harmon, 2 for 2, 53 yards and a touchdown. And Richards, 2 for 4, 31 yards, but he did have a forced fumble. So beat up pretty bad in that secondary, who's, as of late, last couple of weeks been hurting with injuries. It's been, the story of the Patriots has been the offensive line injuries and the injuries on offense. But as of late, the secondary has been taking a pounding. And, we discussed how important this game was to win, which we'll get into with the playoff scenarios and the Steelers in a moment. But, Miami, on to Miami next week to close out the regular season. But South Beach is a pretty damn good place to be for a pre-playoff bye week. So that this Jets game was an important game that they could have locked up that number 1 seed. And next week is virtually meaningless. But now the Dolphins can technically, which I know they probably quit on the season, but they can play spoils. A lot of teams get up for that type of thing. And I think, let's get into the controversy with the Matt Slater. It looked like Bill Belichick elected to if they did win the coin toss, they wanted to defer. They wanted to kick the ball. They did this a couple years ago against Denver. I think it was one of those things where he trusted his defense.
It was a win thing against Denver too. The wind was brutal in that game.
Yes, that's right. I think it was also, was it snowing or raining? That was I think that was 2 years ago.
It was heavy wind and it was brutally cold. I think it was sub-zero temperatures and the wind was blowing like crazy and they took the win in that game.
Okay, so I never questioned Bill Belichick because he trusts his defense, and the offense has been sputtering. He thought that Brady would have done enough if, the defense made a stop, that he could march them into field goal range. You have one of the best kickers in the league, but it looked like there was some confusion. The broadcast team from CBS did an absolutely atrocious job broadcasting this game, but it looks like they were just mixed up on where they wanted to kick off from. That's what it seemed like, the only confusion for me. But as Bill Belichick and people have said, he talked to the head official prior to overtime and said, if we win, we want to kick. So there wasn't really a confusion. I think Matt Slater just thought he had the option to choose where they wanted to kick it. So
that's all it was. I mean, Dan Felt and Iron Eagle were
terrible.
The fact that they tried to make this into a thing where Matt Slater didn't know if he wanted to kick or receive was just pathetic, and they've always
trying to stir up some little maybe controversy, maybe get their name out there, maybe get everyone talking about this game.
Yeah.
Broadcasters have been known to do that.
Yeah. It was the right call in my mind. I had said before the coin toss and before the Patriots even won the coin toss, I want the Patriots, if they win, to kick the ball here because
very unconventional, though. You have to admit, very unconventional trying to kick the ball because obviously with a beat up offense, I don't know any other team or any other coach that doesn't receive that ball to start overtime.
I think it's a detriment of Bill Belichick's way of thinking. It's also one of his greatest attributes because he plays the situation so well. If you go back to 4th and 2 in 2009, he opted to go for it because his defense was getting carved to pieces, and had they just gotten those 2 yards like he thought they could have, they would have just been able to kneel on and end the game. In this game, his offense, even though they had scored a touchdown in the final possession of regulation, they were terrible the entire day. 1 for 10 on 3rd down. They hadn't scored a touchdown until the final minutes, final
Held
2
under
minutes.
300 yards, too.
Terrible
Total offense.
Terrible offensive game against a very good Jets defense on the road. And your defense had only given up 30 yards of offense to the Jets in the fourth quarter. They were playing very well in the fourth quarter.
You keep the momentum rolling.
Put faith in your defense to get off the field or at least give up a field goal at the worst, and then allow your offense to be able to manage to get down the field within the 35-yard line because you have the best kicker in the league who is a range of 55 yards possibly. I thought it was the perfect call. I mean, you make a stop, you get decent field position, and you get within field goal range, game's over, you go home. I thought it was the right call.
And let me expand. I totally agree. Looking back on it, at first I was a little confused, but after you have a chance to dissect and maybe, think about what happened, what actually happened. Bill Belichick, like you said, his best asset is his mind, and it's also a flaw at times. Mid-2000s, he once took a safety on a punt because of the field position game. The guy's a mastermind. Against the Eagles, there's times where it just doesn't work and it comes out flat and, you come out cocky or whatnot. But, like I said, I think it was the right call when you digest it. But I think Bill Belichick also had in the back of his mind rather, that, if you lose this game, it's not the worst possible scenario, especially when the Pittsburgh Steelers are on the horizon looking in, albeit they don't control their own destiny. But I'm telling you, you've been saying it all year. Oh, do they scare you now? Do they scare you now? They do not want to play the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. I'm telling you, they do not.
So you say they lost on purpose?
I'm not saying they lost it on purpose, but I think Bill Belichick had so much confidence in his defense that they could make a stop and then, Mr. Tom Brady would drive him down the field. But worst case scenario, like I said to you pregame, it wouldn't be the worst thing to happen if the Jets beat the Pats and, Pittsburgh end up losing. So it makes me look a little silly. But, Pittsburgh doesn't control their destiny. So as long as Pittsburgh's out of the playoffs, no team really scares me. Denver.
The Jets don't scare you?
Listen, Denver loses tonight. They hopefully don't, we hopefully won't have to go to Mile High. No Andy Dalton for Cincinnati. The Jets, divisional foe, they do scare me. I respect the Jets. I dislike the Jets. Divisional foe, should be able to be a healthy team, should be able to handle them. Kansas City, hottest team in football, 9 straight wins. They don't really – Alex Smith doesn't frighten me that much,
Me neither.
So the one team that Pittsburgh, that offense can light it up, boy, real quick. And, yeah, they lost this past Sunday.
To Ryan Mallett.
Who had a great game.
They're probably the worst team in the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens, this year. You lose to Ryan Allen and you get shredded by Kamar Aiken. Cut from the Patriots.
Stepped up this year, when
got cut from the Patriots
going down. But hey, that's another divisional game. Anything can happen in divisional games. That's the moral of this story. It doesn't matter if you're 2-12 coming in versus a 12-2 opponent. It's a divisional game. You always keep an eye on those trap games, as I call them.
That's true. Getting back to the coin toss here. What it came down to in my mind, this is just the story of the game. Defense choked, flat out choked. Bill Belichick put his faith in his defense. They completely choked. They gave up a huge play in overtime. They quit after that play. Essentially, they get a couple huge games over there. All you got to do is get a stop, get off the field, get up 3 points at the worst, and give your offense the ball back. You didn't even give your offense the chance to get back on the field. That's what it came down to. That's why the Patriots lost, because their defense choked in the end.
But listen,
you got to rely with an offense that's banged up like this is. And no matter how good your offense is in the playoffs, your defense has to make plays and not give up the game-ending plays, or they need to make the big plays when it counts. And this defense against good teams has not done that this year.
Okay, but listen, this is a team that because they're so banged up, they're only going to go as far as their defense allows them. I don't want to say that this was a meaningless game against New York Sunday, but essentially it was. Okay, yes, I know. With the win, they could have clinched, the number 1 seed, and everything would have been great going to Miami, South Beach pre-playoff bye week. So, yeah, all's great. But essentially it was a meaningless game. In the playoffs, the defense is going to turn it around. They're going to play great. They haven't really – my only thing is they haven't really they haven't been creating a lot of turnovers. They haven't done a great job with that. They did have one that, again, in my opinion, the strip sack run back by Jamie Collins, running it back for a touchdown. That changed the whole game, that momentum from defense. Second straight week that the defense has scored a touchdown. So I still think with a team that's so banged up and Tom Brady-led offense, I think that as long as this defense is playing well, and they played well in the second half, compared to the first half, this team will go as far as that defense takes them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore with that. They will go as far as this defense takes them because no matter how good your offense is, and the Patriots' offense really isn't that good right now, even with Julian coming back, you're going to get stopped by a good defense at some point, whether it comes in the divisional round or whether it comes in the Super Bowl, and your offense is going to get slowed down, and your defense is going to have to make plays, which we've seen it in spurts this season. We definitely saw it last year. That's a big reason why they won the Super Bowl, and we're just going to need to see it when it really counts in the postseason.
You know what else we need to see?
What's that?
And it's starting to scare me. They need to establish the run.
No,
yes, they do. They were killed in the first half by time of possession by 10 minutes. They end up losing it by a little under 6. But 63 rushing yards compared to 143 rushing yards for the Jets. They're getting outrushed, and that controls the time of possession, which means Tom Brady's ice cold on the sidelines. They need to establish a run. No, they don't need a 100-yard rusher every game. But this team should be good enough with the Steven Jackson, who got eased into the offense. I expect him to have more carries next Sunday. I expect a team effort of at least 100 rushing yards, 110 rushing yards, whether it's 60 and 40, whether it's 70. It doesn't matter. It has to be a team 100 to 110 rushing yards. Steven Jackson, veteran guy, had 8 straight 1,000-yard seasons with St. Louis. He's going to be the number 1 guy, I think. Brandon Bolden, I think, is going to be, put back on special teams. James White was very silent, even pass catching.
They don't even give him the ball. 6 touchdowns in 6 games. It's so frustrating because he has not done anything on the game field to show that he shouldn't get more touches.
Even Joey Josefa showed that he was formidable 2 weeks ago. And what does he get? He gets 1 carry for 0 yards.
He got cut today.
He was cut today?
Yes, he was cut today, about 2 hours ago. But the hope is that they re-sign him.
Yes, to the practice squad because of Steven Jackson signing. Even James White only rushed the ball twice for 4 yards. And they did a number of end-arounds with Brandon LaFell and Keyshawn Martin, which I think were eventually picked up on. But Brandon Bolden, again, looking formidable, but only at 3.3 yards per rush. Steven Jackson, 2.1. You don't need a crazy per rush average, but I expect a team 100 to 110 rushing yards because Tom Brady, it opens up the play action. Rob Gronkowski disappeared Sunday until the second half, and that's because they started, the defense started playing well. They started running the ball a little bit better. I thought Steven Jackson would get somewhere between 10 and 12 carries. He finished with 7 carries. They need to establish a run. It's very important. I'm telling you that they need to establish a run.
I'm an anti-running game type person. I just go back to the playoffs last year. The Patriots ran the ball once in the second half of the game against Baltimore. They won the game. I think they ran the ball for probably like 20 yards in the Super Bowl.
No, they had about 50 yards total.
Okay, 50.
Yeah, Blunt had 43 by himself.
That's not much for me. Okay,
no, but that to me, yes, but you have to try. You can't throw. Yes, okay. Listen, if tomorrow we wake up and they're in the Super Bowl, you can throw the football 75 times if you want. But Brady's going to keep getting hit. The offensive line is hurt. Volmer has been diagnosed, luckily, with just an ankle sprain. Probably will be out precautionary, in my opinion, for next week. You got the week, the bye week for the playoffs. So he's got about 2-3 weeks to get healthy. I think you have to maybe, I know, and it's not as bad as it looks when your offensive line is so banged up, but they have to establish a running game. If I can't believe you're disagreeing with me. You're telling me if you think Steven Jackson next Sunday rushes for 125 yards, looks great. You don't think that's going to have to – defenses are going to have to keep an eye on that? All of a sudden, play action opens up and Gronk's wide open down the field. It's going to open up the passing game even more. Yeah, the quick outs work great, but you gotta try. I'm not saying run it 25, 30 times a game, but you have to try.
My theory on the Patriots running the ball is that they do it game plan specific. If you play the Indianapolis Colts in the AFC Championship game, yeah, pound the rock. If you play the Dolphins next week, yeah, pound the rock, because you can do it against those teams because they're not good run defenses. If you're telling me they have to play the Jets in a divisional round, I'm throwing the ball 60 times if I have a fully healthy offense out there. I'm not even trying to run the ball because they tried to run the ball yesterday and it didn't work hardly ever. Steven Jackson had a couple nice spurts. I just don't think it'll work. It's a game plan specific type deal for me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it seems, against the Jets, I know you're not going to run the football against the Jets. But when you run it in the first quarter for, 2 yards, and it's like, you know what? All right, we tried. We give up. Let's just throw the ball 40 times. That, to me, that's not establishing a run. That's not even trying. I mean, you have to try. Yes, it's going to be hard to run against the Jets, the Broncos. I'd throw even the Bengals in there. I think they have a respectable defense. But you have to try. You have to – the end arounds aren't going to always work. You can't call it 4 times a game. It's not going to work. 1 or 2 drive start and momentum swing plays, yes, it might pick up a first down. Brandon LaFell did it once and rushed for 9 yards. Martin did it for 6 yards. It will work, but you have to do something, whether it's a pitch or it doesn't matter. Between the tackles, you need to pick up yards on the ground.
Yep. Okay. So real quick here, let's get into some. We've kind of touched on the Patriots here. We touched on the Pittsburgh Steelers losing. Let's get into this story quickly. That's been dominating the NFL world for the past 24 to 48 hours or so. Peyton Manning, Al Jazeera documentary, profiling players doing HGH, and we don't have all the specifics quotes right now, but it appears that Peyton Manning was getting HGH delivered to his house from a pharmacist to his wife's name, which anybody with a brain realizes that Peyton Manning is taking that in 2011 after his 4 neck surgeries. I don't have a problem with him taking HGH because it's something all NFL players do. It's just one of the dirty secrets of the NFL. All players do HGH to come back from surgeries. Let's not pretend like Rob Gronkowski wasn't eating HGH for breakfast after his 3 back surgeries and his ACL surgery. But the fact that Peyton's coming out and denying it is a little annoying.
Listen, he came back from 4 neck surgeries. That is unbelievable that he can still play football. I don't blame him for taking HGH. You see his chicken bomb commercials, HGH, you taste so good. I mean, if it helps him get back on the field, that's all right. What I don't like is the coverage or the lack thereof coverage that ESPN's given it, where Brady, when Brady with the deflated footballs and Deflategate, they were very quick to get way too personal in Brady's life. The New York Post did a cover story with Giselle talking about the deflated footballs, about Brady's ball, like very inappropriate. And, one of the ESPN representatives tweeted out that it's too personal to bring in Ashley Manning, Peyton Manning's wife. But why did you do it at Brady? Why was everyone crucifying Tom Brady? I know people watching this are probably going to be like, oh, more, whining Patriots fans, but this hasn't gotten any coverage. I know Al Jazeera isn't, known for sports type stories or anything like that, but there should be more talking than what it is. No one really cares, and people should pay attention to it.
Yeah, what it's coming down to, I mean, you can bring it down to one guy, and that's probably the most beloved, sarcastically, news reporter in New England is Chris Mortensen, the man who
Hate
broke
him. He loses credibility, man. Every time he's on TV, change the channel, mute. I don't need to hear anything he says.
every Patriots fan hates him. He broke the Deflategate story. His tweet was wrong. He never denied it. And the fact that he's a higher up at ESPN. He's been there forever. He's not going to talk about this story because him and Archie Manning are buddy. So they're going to defend Peyton to the wall, like Patriots fans defended Tom Brady to the wall against ESPN. That's just how this story is going to work out. ESPN won't do any coverage on it at all, and probably the NFL national media as a whole won't do because Peyton's their darling, and Brady they can go after as much as they want.
There's no denying there was malicious intent with the reporting ESPN had on the Patriots, with starting with the Chris Mortensen stuff. But listen, I'm in the journalism field. You're in the journalism field. I work for a prominent newspaper. I know that if I was going out there saying that this is a certain way and my sources were off or the source lied to me, you're going to get in big time trouble and get demoted. And not to mention, you're going to lose your credibility. And this guy ESPN had no recourse to discipline him. They had every recourse to discipline him, but they took no actions to retract anything. Instead, they just let the whole company as a whole attack. And, I have to give a shout out because there are people like Skip Bayless who just, he says crazy, dumb stuff sometimes, but here's a guy that literally has always been on the Patriots band. I guess you could call it bandwagon. Adam Schefter also backed the Patriots when he said Tom Brady was glistening as he walked into the meeting with Roger Goodell. He was very respectful. Like, Adam Schefter backed the Patriots as well. So I think there should have been a little recourse for Mortensen there. That's all. But let's not get into the Deflategate stuff.
Please,
we're talking about Peyton Manning.
Please,
no need to give anyone a headache.
But yeah, that was just quick on the Peyton Manning story. We had to touch on it. This is a whip around podcast, and it was probably the biggest story of the NFL weekend. But it's probably going to die out because the national media doesn't want to crucify Peyton Manning because that's their golden boy. Just the fact that he's been denying things is a little annoying here.
Which, by the way, I don't think he should regain that starting Denver team.
No, they're down 7-0 right now. So they got other problems besides just on offense here. So if you're a Patriots fan in this game, you should be rooting for the Bengals without a doubt because they win this week. Denver, no chance you're going to Denver next week. And even if you lose, I don't have much faith in Cincinnati winning their first playoff game. And even if you have to go to Cincinnati, I'm not overly afraid. But write that off. Number one
goal is a lot harder to play than Cincinnati. So
yeah, but there's no excuse unless the Patriots deliberately just rest everybody this week, which I don't think they will. You got to get that number one seed this week. There's no excuse for you not winning in Miami against a terrible Dolphins team.
I think it's important to come out strong. If they get out to
they need a good
3 lead in halftime, unless it's an all-out blowout in the first half, I think you got to keep your guys in until at least the third quarter, mid-third quarter. Like I said, if you're up 3 scores or if you're up 21-3 or 24-7, I think you bring Brady out on the field for a couple drives in the third, and I think rest is important at this point. Definitely got to win the game, but I have all the faith in Jimmy G, and I've been saying it. And another thing that we probably could talk about in the future podcast is, we were talking about Chandler Jones this off air. I think he's gone after his contract expires next year in New England, because someone is going to throw a ridiculous amount of money at someone who can rush the quarterback because there's just not too many of those in the league. And he may not live up to it. You said try to trade him in the offseason because the value may not be as high as it ever will be. And, I'm not a fan of letting someone just walk away because I think there's a very slim chance that Chandler Jones returns with Hightower and Collins. I know there's a couple contracts up. There's a very slim chance of bringing back everybody. But Jimmy G is a guy that we, talked about. I don't think I'd trade him. I think he's the future. Brady's not going to play till he's 45 or 50 years old, like he suggests. Jimmy G's the future.
I just don't know what anybody's seen to prove that Jimmy G's the future. I just don't know what it is that has shown me that he can take over as quarterback. That's just why I think you can trade him and bring another guy and groom him because I think Brady's got a few more years left. But, I mean, that's a whole nother topic we can delve into here. But this is Frang and Mack on a Monday night. Anything else you want to add to this podcast, Frang?
No, but I think we can shout out that the next podcast we are going to have a friend of mine, Adam Kaplan, who is born and raised in Miami, Florida, is a Dolphins fan, a Heat fan, the whole 9 yards, Miami, all that. Came here to Boston for schooling. Now he's, rooting on for the Miami Dolphins next week. So we're going to have our Miami Dolphins correspondent on. So that should be an interesting debate coming up in the next few days.
That will be interesting. I can't wait to hear about Ryan Tannehill and Cambo and who they think the next head coach will be down there. But that's going to do it for this edition of Frang and Mack NFL Whip Around, which turned into mostly just the Patriots recap. Thanks for tuning in, guys.